When my grandfather passed away, I expected to inherit a small ranch somewhere in the countryside. He had always been a quiet man who kept most things private, so I didn't think much about the paperwork the lawyer handed me. But the moment I unfolded the property map, something immediately caught my attention. The land wasn't small at all. According to the official county records, my grandfather had owned 1,300 acres of land. At first, I thought maybe it was just open farmland or forest. But when I drove out there to see it myself, I realized something shocking. Right in the middle of that land was an entire neighborhood. I'm not talking about a few houses either. This was a full lakeside community. Beautiful homes lined the streets. Boats sat on private docks, and perfectly trimmed lawns stretched down toward the water. It looked like a peaceful suburban paradise. And right at the entrance was a large sign, Private Community, HOA managed. At first, I assumed the neighborhood owned the land they were built on. That would be the normal situation. But when I compared the neighborhood map with my grandfather's property deed, I realized something unbelievable. The entire HOA community was sitting inside the boundary lines of my land. Every house, every road, even the lake access. I double-checked the county records just to make sure there wasn't some kind of mistake. But everything matched perfectly. My grandfather had owned the land long before the neighborhood was ever developed. Apparently, the developers had made an agreement years ago that allowed the community to exist there, but the land itself had never been sold, which meant the HOA didn't actually own it. About a week after I started looking into everything, I got my first visit from the HOA president. She arrived in a very expensive-looking SUV and walked over with the kind of confidence you only see from someone who believes they run the place. She introduced herself and immediately began explaining the community's standards. According to her, my old ranch truck parked near the property line was violating their neighborhood rules. I just listened quietly. Then I reached into my folder and showed her the deed. The moment she read the document, her expression changed. The confidence disappeared almost instantly because the paperwork clearly showed that the land beneath the entire neighborhood belonged to me. Not long after that, the HOA board invited me to attend one of their meetings. I could tell they were nervous, but they tried to keep their usual authoritative tone. They asked what my plans were for the property. Honestly, I told them I didn't have any plans to disturb the neighborhood. People had built their homes there, and I wasn't interested in causing trouble. I just wanted to understand the situation and make sure everything stayed fair. But things took a strange turn a few days later. I received a letter from the HOA. It was a violation notice. Apparently, they were attempting to fine me for not following their community rules. That's when I realized something important. The HOA still believed they were the ones in charge. So I decided to speak with a property lawyer. We spent several hours reviewing the documents, the old development agreements, and the current land boundaries. When we finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair and said something that surprised me. Legally, because I owned the land, the community technically needed permission to use it. In other words, they could be required to pay rent. At first, I didn't take the idea seriously. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If the HOA wanted to treat me like an outsider on my own property, then maybe it was time to remind them who actually owned the ground beneath their houses. So we prepared a formal notice. Nothing aggressive, just a simple legal document explaining that the neighborhood was located on privately owned land. Starting the following month, the HOA would need to pay land usage rent. And because of the years of unauthorized control they had tried to exercise, the rate was now 5 times higher. The reaction was immediate. Within hours of the letters being delivered, the entire neighborhood was buzzing with confusion and frustration. The HOA board called an emergency meeting that same evening. This time, the tone of the meeting was very different. Instead of making demands, they were asking questions. And for the first time since I had inherited the property, the HOA president didn't look confident at all, because the reality was simple. Their beautiful lakeside community was built on land they never actually owned, and now they finally had to deal with the person who did. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from?